After a decade of nonstop sacrifice, working harder than anyone else, I was blindsided by a secret that shattered my world. My sister, with zero experience, became the majority owner of the company I helped build. What happens next? Before starting this story, if you are listening from USA, please leave a comment with number 9. And if you are from another country, please leave the name of your lovely country. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to listen to more stories. I dedicated the first 10 years of my adult life to Harper Construction, the family business founded by my father in Greenville, South Carolina. From as early as I can remember, the company was more than just a job, it was the very fabric of my existence. I spent countless afternoons sitting beneath my father's massive oak desk, tracing the lines of blueprints while he handled calls that kept the business running. By the time I was 8, I already knew the difference between a blueprint and a floor plan. At 12, I spent my summers filing documents and answering phones, learning every detail I could. My father, Robert Harper, always told me with a proud smile, "Calliope, you have the Harper business sense. One day, this company will be yours." Those words became the foundation of my life's purpose. While other kids dreamed of far-off adventures, I dreamed only of building Harper Construction into a legacy to be proud of. College was a straightforward choice. I majored in business management with a minor in construction administration. I graduated at the top of my class, turning down 3 prestigious job offers to return home and work alongside my father. The Monday after graduation, I walked into the office determined to prove myself. For the next 10 years, I poured every ounce of energy into that company. I was the first to arrive each morning and often the last to leave at night, sometimes crashing on the office couch during the busiest seasons. I built strong relationships with every major client, learning their preferences, their children's names, even their anniversaries. I modernized the accounting system, digitized records, and implemented project management software that cut our project timelines by nearly 40%. Under my watch as operations manager, revenue doubled, yet my father kept the CEO title, a reminder that I was still the heir in waiting. Titles did not matter to me. The work and results did. My personal life, however, suffered. 2 serious relationships ended because work emergencies took precedence over date nights. My apartment became little more than a place to shower and occasionally sleep. Friends stopped inviting me on weekend trips, knowing my answer would be, "Sorry, we've got a deadline." I missed my college roommate's wedding because it coincided with negotiations for our biggest client contract yet. I never regretted those sacrifices. Every sleepless night, every missed event, was an investment in my future, the future my father promised me. But sometimes, the future has a way of unraveling when you least expect it. My sister Remy Harper was always the complete opposite of me. While I buried myself in blueprints and spreadsheets, she chased sunsets in far-off cities. Remy's 20s were spent wandering through European art galleries, pursuing a degree in art history, and embracing a lifestyle I could hardly comprehend. She lived in tiny apartments in Barcelona and Florence, dated charming men with thick accents, and came home with stories of midnight swims in the Mediterranean under starry skies. When she finally returned to Greenville after a difficult breakup with a French gallery owner, my parents welcomed her back with open arms. Their excitement was palpable, as if her return filled a void that had been waiting all these years. Remy seemed eager to be part of the family again, reconnecting with old friends and sharing her adventures. But there was something more an interest in Harper Construction that surprised me. Despite having zero experience in construction, my father wasted no time creating a position for her creative director. He called it a role that was as vague as it was convenient. Remy worked about 25 hours a week, took long lunches that sometimes stretched into 2 hours, and routinely left the office by 4 in the afternoon. It was a stark contrast to my own 80-hour work weeks and constant grind. At first, I was genuinely glad to have her back. Her fresh ideas for marketing and branding were impressive, and for a while, it seemed like she might bring new energy and perspective to the company. Family dinners became lively again, with Remy telling stories about challenging clients while I listened quietly. drained from the relentless pace of my own workload. But as the weeks passed, subtle changes crept into our family dynamic. Conversations about the company's future started to hush the moment I entered the room. My parents began having private meetings with Remy, excluding me whenever I brought up long-term strategies. My mother would gently steer the topic away, telling me, "Calliope, you work too hard. Let's not talk business tonight," as she refilled my glass for the third time. Despite these signs, I trusted my family completely. I believed in my father's promise that one day the company would be mine, that all my sacrifices and sleepless nights were worth it. I believed my dedication mattered, but deep down, an uneasy feeling settled in, as if the ground beneath me was slowly shifting, and I was too blind to see it coming. This was a world divided, two sisters, two lives, and two very different futures waiting to unfold. It was a late Friday afternoon in early October when I stumbled upon the truth that shattered everything I had believed in. The office was unusually quiet, the usual hum of activity replaced by a strange stillness that made the air feel heavy. We were in the middle of a major filing overhaul, a project Remy had suggested that was already causing confusion in our once efficient system. I was searching for the original contract related to the Riverview development, hoping to resolve a discrepancy in the billing. As I rifled through the cabinet labeled confidential legal documents, my fingers brushed against a thick, manila folder that caught my attention. The tab read, "Harper Construction Ownership Transfer." My heart skipped a beat, but I convinced myself it was likely an old document from years ago, perhaps something from when my grandfather handed the company over to my father decades back. The date on the first page stopped me cold March 15th of this year, just 7 months earlier. My hands trembled as I pulled the papers out and scanned the dense legal language, but certain words leapt out at me with brutal clarity. 75% ownership transferred to Remy Harper, and 25% retained by Robert and Margaret Harper. My name was nowhere to be found on the entire 20-page document. A cold wave of betrayal washed over me. The room suddenly felt too bright, the air too thin. I flipped through every page, desperate to find an explanation, some clause, some footnote, anything that would make sense of this nightmare. There was nothing. "Calliope, are you okay?" Eleanor Johnson, our longtime office manager, stepped quietly into the room. Her face was etched with concern when she saw what I held. "Did you know about this?" I asked in a barely audible whisper. Eleanor glanced down at her shoes, her silence answering my question before she spoke. "I was the last to know," she admitted softly. "Your father asked us not to say anything until he was ready to tell you himself." "But it's been 7 months, I said, a hysterical edge creeping into my voice. When would that right time be? I clutched the folder tighter against my chest. "Most of the senior staff have been informed, for contract reasons," Eleanor continued, her voice low. "I'm sorry, Calliope. You weren't the only one kept in the dark. The humiliation burned far worse than the betrayal. Everyone had watched me sacrifice myself for this company, working late nights, missing birthdays, and giving everything I had, all while Remy quietly became the majority owner behind my back." "Calliope, you need to calm down," Eleanor began again, but I was already moving past her, my mind racing, heart pounding. I grabbed my purse, leaving my laptop and unfinished reports behind. Nothing mattered anymore. The drive home was a blur. I barely noticed red lights or near misses as my mind replayed every promise my father ever made. "One day this will be yours," he said on my first day. "I'm training you to take over." Every word now felt like a lie. My apartment was dark and empty when I arrived. I sank onto the couch, the folder still clutched in my hands, staring at the blank wall where family photos might have hung. Questions swirled in my mind. Had I not worked hard enough? Was I not smart enough? Was I simply replaceable? 10 years of devotion vanished overnight. The future I had built was handed away without my knowledge. The weight of that unfairness crushed me, and in the silence of that night, I finally let the tears fall. I arrived at my parents' house precisely at 6 o'clock that Sunday evening. my heart heavy with a mix of anger and exhaustion. The familiar brick facade of their suburban home looked the same, yet to me, it felt like the front door to a stranger's world. The comforting aroma of my mother's pot roast, my favorite dish, wafted from the kitchen, but the warmth I once associated with family dinners was nowhere to be found. I walked in without knocking. My father sat in his usual armchair, glasses perched low on his nose, absorbed in a stack of project documents. Remy was setting the table, laughing softly at something my mother had said from the kitchen. The scene was painfully normal, as if nothing had changed between us. "Calliope," my mother called cheerfully from the kitchen. "Perfect timing. Dinner will be ready soon." She smiled warmly and came forward to embrace me, but I returned the hug mechanically, my mind racing. "Can I help with anything?" I asked, forcing my voice to sound steady. "No, no," Remy said with a bright smile. "I've got everything under control. You just relax." Her casual tone, the ease with which she dismissed me, stung more than I expected. "How was your Saturday?" she asked, as if nothing had happened. "I tried texting you about the new client presentation, but you didn't reply." I forced a vague response. "I just needed some time offline. The presentation is fine." My father finally looked up, his eyes lingering on me briefly. "There you are," he said. "I was starting to think you'd skip dinner. We have some exciting news about the Westridge project." The way he spoke as if the last 7 months hadn't happened made something inside me snap, but I swallowed the urge to lash out. Not yet. I needed to get through dinner first, to confirm that they still had no intention of telling me the truth. The meal was unbearable. I pushed food around my plate, barely tasting the familiar flavors. Remy enthusiastically described her latest marketing ideas, and my father nodded approvingly at every word. My mother tried desperately to steer the conversation to safer topics: her garden club, the neighbor's new dog, an upcoming fundraiser, but the atmosphere remained thick with unspoken tension. I spoke little, answering questions with short, clipped replies. If anyone noticed my silence, they said nothing. After dessert apple pie, I couldn't bring myself to eat. My father stood up. "I think I'll go catch the end of the game." "Remy, stop by my study later. I want to discuss that supplier issue." That was my moment. I cleared my throat, voice steady but firm. "Actually, I need to talk to all of you. Together." The room froze. My mother's hand hesitated mid-motion. Remy's smile faltered, and my father sank back into his chair, eyes narrowing. "What's going on?" "Calliope," my mother asked, her voice laced with concern. I reached into my purse and pulled out the manila folder, placing it deliberately on the table. "When were you planning to tell me about this?" I asked quietly, but my words carried the weight of betrayal. Silence filled the room. My father's face hardened, his calm, professional mask slipping. My mother's eyes widened, her throat tightening. Remy stared at her lap, avoiding my gaze. "Where did you get that?" my father finally demanded. "Does it matter?" I shot back. Was I supposed to work 80-hour weeks for the rest of my life without knowing my sister owns the company? My mother reached for my hand, her voice pleading. "Sweetheart, we were going to tell you. We just couldn't find the right time. The right time would have been before you signed those papers. Mom, not 7 months later." My father's voice grew cold and authoritative. This was a strategic decision for the future of Harper Construction. Remy has fresh ideas and a new vision for where we can take the company. I do not. I slammed my hand on the table. "Making the silverware jump. Then why didn't you just talk to me? Why reject my ideas only to hand them to Remy? I was building this future for you." "You're too much like me," he said dismissively. "Too traditional. The industry is changing, and we need to change with it. Then teach me." I snapped. "Don't cut me out." My mother's voice trembled. "You work yourself to death for this company." Was that the plan? Remy finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Calliope, it wasn't like that. Dad asked me to help." "Don't pretend you didn't know what you were taking from me," I said, voice shaking. My father stood, furious. "Remy has been vital to our recent growth. Her plans for residential expansion, I gave you those plans 3 years ago." I interrupted bitterly. You called them too risky. Calliope, you're being dramatic. My father said coldly. You still have a good job with growth potential. Growth potential, I repeated, disbelief burning in my chest. I've been running this company for years while you played golf with clients. What future is left for me? My mother's tears fell freely. You two have always been a team. We're not a team, I said quietly. I'm the workhorse. She's the owner. The room was heavy with silence. I stood, gathering my purse and the folder. If Remy owns the company, she can run it. I quit. My father's protests fell on deaf ears. I walked to the door without looking back. The only thing I felt was a fierce, bitter relief. After leaving the house that night, I felt as though a chapter of my life had closed, painful, raw, and irrevocable. The next days were a blur of mixed emotions, sorrow, anger, and a stubborn determination to reclaim my sense of self. For the first time in years, I had no company to run, no deadlines to meet, no endless emergencies to manage, but without that structure, I found myself drifting in an unfamiliar void. I reached out to old friends who had long since fallen away during my decades of non-stop work. Their warmth and genuine concern reminded me of the life I'd put on hold. I also connected with my lawyer friend, Sophia Rodriguez, to understand my options. She carefully reviewed my employment contract and the ownership transfer documents, assuring me that while nothing legally barred my family's actions, the betrayal was undeniable. Sophia advised me to document everything: my contributions, the client relationships I had built, the systems I'd implemented purely to establish my value, not for revenge, but as protection for whatever the future might hold. I spent hours compiling detailed records, notes, and personal insights that hadn't been formally recognized but were integral to the company's success. At the same time, I began rebuilding a life outside of Harper Construction. Morning walks through the quiet park near my apartment, a place I had driven past for years without stepping foot in it, became a daily ritual. I started cooking proper breakfasts instead of gulping coffee on the go, and I signed up for yoga classes, something I'd always told myself I didn't have time for. As the days passed, I deliberately ignored the barrage of texts and emails from the office, messages from Remy, my parents, and even clients piled up requests for contract revisions, urgent questions about bids, panicked calls from my father. I let the phone go to voicemail and deleted most messages unread. The silence was difficult, but necessary. My parents' voices on the voicemail were tinged with guilt and desperation. My mother pleaded softly, "Sweetheart, we're worried about you. This isn't like you." My father's tone was harsher, demanding, "Calliope, you need to come back. The clients won't wait." But I didn't answer. I used journaling to vent my swirling emotions: frustration, grief, and at times, a fierce sense of empowerment. Executive recruiters reached out after hearing my story, stunned by my qualifications and industry reputation. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider a future beyond the company I had believed would be mine. Yet the mental battle was far from over. Some days, I found myself frozen, staring blankly at the wall, haunted by moments when I should have seen the warning signs. I questioned how I had been so blind to the growing divide within my family and the creeping sidelining of my role. Then came a call that cut through the fog. Maxwell Anderson himself, CEO of our biggest client, rang my personal phone. His voice was gruff with concern. "Calliope, what's going on over there? I've been working with Remy, but she doesn't have half your knowledge about the project." I told him I was on extended leave, redirecting him to Remy, but the disappointment in his voice was clear. "I've trusted you for 5 years. Suddenly, you're gone and no one gives me a straight answer. We have a $12 million project starting soon, and I need someone competent leading it." His words echoed in my mind long after the call ended. For the first time, I let myself imagine a life apart from Harper Construction, a future where I wasn't defined by sacrifice, betrayal, or false promises. 3 days after I had cut ties, my father showed up at my apartment unannounced. The man who had always been the picture of calm and control looked disheveled, his once pristine tie loosened, and his confident posture replaced by slumped shoulders. I hesitated for a moment, debating whether to answer. But running away had never been my style. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door and let him in. He paced the small living room like a caged animal, frustration radiating from every movement. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he demanded, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. "Anderson is just the beginning. Westridge called this morning. They're asking specifically for you. The Maxwell bid is due Friday, and Remy can't make sense of your notes." I crossed my arms and leaned against the wall, feeling an unexpected calm settle over me. "Sounds like a management problem. Good thing Remy owns the company now." His face twisted in disbelief. "This isn't a game. Calliope, this is your grandfather's legacy, our heritage." I met his gaze, anger flaring in my chest. "You gave that heritage to Remy. I don't have time for this." "Calliope, you're enjoying this. Aren't you watching everything fall apart?" "Not enjoying," I said evenly. "Processing." I moved to sit on the couch, gesturing for him to take the armchair opposite me. After a moment's hesitation, he sat heavily. "I didn't come here to fight," he said, his voice shifting to the tone he used when negotiating with difficult clients. "I came to offer you a solution." I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "I'm listening." "Chief Operations Officer," he said. "Full autonomy over project management. Double your previous salary. Corner office." I nearly laughed out loud. "You're offering me a promotion to do the exact same job I was already doing." "It's a significant promotion," he insisted. "You'll report directly to the CEO, which is Remy." I interrupted. His silence confirmed it. "Let me get this straight," I continued. "You want me to come back and save the company from the mess you created while working under the sister who took my birthright? That's your offer." "What do you want?" "Calliope," he asked, exasperation clear in his voice. 40% ownership," I said without hesitation. "A seat on the board. Normal working hours." His eyes widened. "That's impossible. Remy already owns 75%. Then she can sell some back," I said firmly. "Or you and Mom can give me part of your 25%. I don't care how it works mathematically. Those are my terms." He scoffed. "You can't seriously expect that." "I've already talked to Garrett Westfield," I said smoothly. "Operations director position, comparable salary, profit sharing, reasonable hours, and weeks of vacation. That's your competitor." He whispered. "I haven't accepted yet," I replied. "But Maxwell Anderson said he'd follow me anywhere." His face drained of color. "That would destroy Harper Construction." "I don't want to destroy anything." "Dad," I said, "but I'm done building something that isn't mine." He stood and resumed pacing. "There has to be another solution." "There is," I said evenly. "The one I just proposed." He shook his head. "Remy will never agree to give up that much control. Then maybe you should have thought about that before giving her control in the first place." I replied. "This isn't a negotiation where you hold the upper hand anymore. I know my worth now. Do you?" He stared at me long and hard, as if weighing the cost of meeting my demands against the potential fallout. "Finally," he said, "I need to talk to your mother and Remy." "You do that," I said firmly. "How long before you give me an answer?" 2 days. He muttered. I nodded. "Wednesday evening. That's the deadline." The day of the meeting arrived with a tension that hung heavy in the air. We gathered at a quiet restaurant by the river, a neutral ground chosen to keep things professional. My parents, Remy, our family lawyer Harold Peterson, and I sat around a corner table, the leather portfolio filled with documents resting on the surface between us. My mother stood and offered a tentative hug as I arrived. I accepted her embrace but kept a firm hand extended for the others. This was not a family reunion. It was a business negotiation. Remy nodded stiffly in greeting, her eyes avoiding mine. My father's gaze was sharp, but there was a flicker of something new, perhaps respect or uncertainty. "Thank you all for coming," my father began formally. "We have reviewed your proposal." Before he could continue, Remy interrupted. Her voice was soft, a mixture of remorse and exhaustion. "Calliope, I want to say I'm sorry. I never intended to hurt you or take what you worked so hard for." Her words caught me off guard. I hadn't expected an apology, especially not from Remy. She went on, "I've been overwhelmed. I've been working 18-hour days trying to keep up with everything you handled effortlessly. The Anderson account alone is like deciphering hieroglyphics." I looked at her, surprised. "You've been here for 2 years. Didn't you pay attention to how things worked? The operational side, the details." She shook her head slowly. "I thought I could learn as I went, but not without you." My father cleared his throat, breaking the silence. What Remy is trying to say is that we made a mistake. His admission was unprecedented in 32 years. I had never heard him acknowledge an error so directly. Remy added quietly, "I wasn't told you were promised to the company before the papers were signed." I looked at my father. "Is that true?" He nodded slowly. "I may have downplayed your expectations. I thought it would be easier for everyone." My mother reached across the table, but hesitated before touching my hand. "We've hardly slept since you left, Calliope, not just because of business problems, but because we hurt you deeply. That was never our intention." Harold Peterson, our lawyer, cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should discuss the terms. I've drafted several options based on our previous conversations. For the next hour, we negotiated carefully. My father initially countered with 20% ownership, which I rejected outright. Remy surprised everyone by offering to transfer 35% directly to me from her share. "I never wanted to be the majority owner," she said sincerely. "I just wanted to be part of the family business without being stuck in the accounting department." I looked at her and said, "You could have told me that 10 years ago." There was less bite in my words now, replaced by a quiet acknowledgement of the past. By the time we finished, we had outlined an agreement. I would receive 35% ownership transferred from Remy, reducing her stake to 40%. Our parents would retain 25%. I would become Chief Operations Officer with equal decision-making authority alongside Remy, who would focus on creative direction and client relations areas that suited her strengths. Board decisions would require a majority vote, ensuring no major changes could happen without the agreement of at least 2 of the 3 owners. Most importantly, the agreement included a mandatory 45-hour workweek maximum for all executives and at least 3 weeks of annual vacation. The culture of endless work that had defined Harper Construction under my father would finally end. As Harold drafted the final points, Remy leaned toward me and whispered, "Can we talk? Just the 2 of us?" I hesitated but nodded. 5 minutes later, we stepped outside onto the quiet patio. For the first time, Remy admitted, "I never wanted to hurt you. When Dad approached me, he made it sound like you were needed in operations more than ownership, and you believed him." I wanted to be skeptical but said nothing. I thought I was the black sheep, the one who never measured up. Coming back, hearing about your success, I felt inadequate. We stood in silence, years of rivalry and distance dissolving in that moment. We never really talked. "Did we?" I finally said. "No, not about anything important." She agreed. She admitted, "I'm terrible at running the company, but I want to contribute, especially if I can work with you." For the first time, I saw a future where Remy and I could complement each other instead of compete. Returning inside, we signed the letter of intent, each of us aware that this was not just a business deal, but the beginning of healing for our fractured family and company. Sitting alone on my balcony that evening, glass of wine in hand, I finally allowed myself to breathe, for the first time in over a decade. I wasn't consumed by work, deadlines, or family drama. The city lights twinkled below, a reminder that life moved on whether I was ready or not. This journey had been painful, filled with betrayal and heartbreak, but it had also brought me to a place I never imagined: freedom. Reclaiming my stake in Harper Construction wasn't just about ownership. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my voice. I had learned that knowing your worth isn't selfish, it's essential. For years, I had given everything, expecting loyalty and respect in return. When they withheld the truth and handed my future to my sister, I felt invisible, but standing up for myself changed everything. I've come to understand that sometimes the hardest person to confront is the one who raised you. Family can be a source of both profound love and deep pain. It took losing what I thought was my destiny to discover what I truly needed: respect, partnership, and balance, and perhaps a chance to build something better not just for me, but for all of us. A month later, I walked into Harper Construction as co-owner and chief operations officer. The office had changed not just physically, with a redesigned workspace filled with natural light, but culturally, Remy and I had found an unexpected rhythm, dividing responsibilities in ways that played to our strengths. She led client relations and marketing, areas where her creativity shined. I managed operations, finance, and project execution, focusing on stability and efficiency. Our father had stepped back into an advisory role, mentoring younger staff and easing into retirement. The company's first quarter projections were already showing growth under our shared leadership. The staff seemed relieved that the pressure of endless work weeks was lifting, replaced by a healthier, more balanced approach. Most importantly, I had reclaimed my life. I started going to the gym 3 times a week, joined a book club, and even considered adopting a dog, little things I had long neglected. I reconnected with friends and began exploring a relationship with Nathan, an engineer I met years ago. For the first time, I could talk about my family drama without pain overshadowing the story. Looking back, I wonder, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have walked away completely or fought tooth and nail for what was rightfully yours? Have you ever had to stand up to family to protect your own worth? This story carries a powerful lesson about self-worth, resilience, and the courage to stand up for oneself even when it means confronting those closest to you. In today's world, many of us face situations where loyalty and hard work go unrecognized, especially within families or close communities. Calliope's journey reminds us that no amount of sacrifice justifies losing sight of our own value. It encourages viewers to recognize when it's time to set boundaries, demand respect, and reclaim control over their own lives and futures. This story is a work of fiction created for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to attack or defame any individual, family, or organization. Any resemblance to real persons or events is purely coincidental. If this story moved you or sparked a thought, please let us know by commenting below. Your likes, shares, and subscriptions help us create more stories that inspire and entertain. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching and being part of our community.